Welcome to the Responder Reset podcast, created by Lighthouse Health and Wellness. I'm your host, Rich Creamer. This podcast exists because the job didn't come with the reset button. We're here to talk about what the uniform takes from us and what it means to take it back. Real stories, real conversations, no filter. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the Responder Reset podcast. We're on episode 4. We're moving right along. We're in part 3 of the 7-part series of public safety, the 7 deadly sins of public safety wellness. Today's topic is going to be one, it should ruffle some feathers. We're going to talk stigma and the overuse of the term stigma. You see, I think it's used so much in the public safety space that it's totally lost its meaning. When you ask people, well, what is the stigma? It just seems to be the word people use to kind of deflect what truly is some of the issues within the public safety wellness space. Every time somebody avoids help or avoids talking or avoids being real, we blame stigma. It's an easy catch-all. It can be used as a crutch, and we're going to talk about how it's used as a crutch throughout today's podcast. It's weird because it's become the safest word in the public safety wellness dictionary. It's a word you can say in a meeting without making anybody uncomfortable. People automatically know what the stigma is. It's also a word that gets applause and gets praise when we want to quote unquote hashtag end the stigma or stop the stigma. But here's the real truth. Stigma's not the problem. It's an excuse. And it continues to be an excuse because we continue to use it and overuse it in public safety wellness so much that it's now used to sell T-shirts. It's now used to sell solutions. Whatever we can throw the term stigma on, it sells. And unfortunately, we in the public safety space, we pick up on that and we use it to our advantage. And we use the term to our advantage when things get a little uncomfortable to talk about. We'll just say it's the stigma. So I want to talk about how the fact is, first responders aren't staying silent because of the stigma. They're staying silent because the system is completely broken. It's completely broken because we haven't rendered a safe environment to really talk about some of the things that perpetuate the stigma. Leadership hasn't earned trust. We know that peers gossip, clinicians don't understand the lifestyle. And unfortunately, because the loudest people in the room have the voice, it's kind of tough not to talk about the quote unquote stigma without realizing at the end of the day, consequences still exist for some of the actions or inactions, but the support doesn't. The support only exists, like I said in the previous podcast, in a performative nature. People like to say that there's support in place, but with that support also comes consequences. So we're going to kind of break this down a little bit further. I talked about it being the crutch that most first responders lean on. We only lean on it because it's tough to kind of face the real issues, and it's tough to hear the truth. It's become the catch-all that lets both agencies avoid accountability and lets programs pretend that they're actually doing something to make progress. So today we're going to strip that word down to the studs. We're going to strip it down to the bare minimum. We're going to talk about what's really stopping people from asking for help and why the stigma narrative is protecting the wrong people and what needs to change before responders actually believe wellness is real. You see, this is the crutch, and it's time that we break it in half. So, look, the word stigma has become the perfect deflection. See, agencies like to blame the term stigma so they don't have to change the culture. Leaders blame it so they don't have to reveal their own shit that they're dealing with. Clinicians, they blame it too. They blame it so they don't have to examine why responders don't trust them. Wellness committees use it to avoid uncomfortable truths, and it's funny that I bring this up from a wellness committee standpoint, because the term was brought up in a committee that I belong to, which then started a difficult conversation. In that conversation, a town hall meeting about the topic was established. And we talked about it at length. And we met again, and we continued to talk about it. You see, if we continue to talk about it without any actual action behind it, or taking action to remove it from our language, then we'll continue to meet and we'll continue to go around the stigma circle for as long as these committees meet. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Nobody really wants to get down to the bare bones as to what actually is the stigma. You see, I don't remember that class in the academy. Nobody taught me what the stigma was for reaching out for help. I solely leaned on informal leaders, seasoned veterans, supervision, who basically told me, if you seek help, you might as well find another job. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what that even means, and what I believe some of the misconception of getting help truly is, what the misconception of those words really are, and what stigma, once it's removed from our language and we can actually normalize the feelings or emotions that we may face throughout our career and label it correctly, then I think we remove the stigma altogether. Because at the end of the day, we created it. As a culture, we created the term stigma, and it's up to us to have it removed from our everyday language when it comes to mental health and wellness in public safety. You see, the term stigma feels safe because it's very vague. It's invisible at times, and no one has to take responsibility when the quote unquote villain is undefined. We don't have to kind of rally around anything. We can just say the term, and everybody has this understanding, this unwritten understanding of what the term stigma truly is. Like I said, first responders aren't avoiding help because of stigma. They're avoiding it because the system hasn't earned their vulnerability. And that's the harsh truth. Whether it be agencies, whether it be peer units, whether it be wellness committees, at the end of the day, first responders aren't ready to drop their guard. And I think that has a lot to do with the current state of wellness in the first responder community. There's so many one-off solutions. We're saturated with advocates. We're saturated with subject matter experts, self-proclaimed subject matter experts who unfortunately continue to help this stigma topic along. So let's get into what's really stopping first responders. Let's name the real barriers. Let's do that. Let's not use the term stigma, and let's actually use the barriers for what they are. The name, I think most can probably agree that most of the time it's fear of career damage. And I've said this in the back, I really don't care about the job at the end of the day. And I know that most will not agree with what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, you're nothing but 3 emails. The first email you get is welcome to the police, fire, EMS, dispatch, whatever it may be, whatever your academy is. And they give you a date and they tell you what time to be there. And then we work towards that second one that we all are just working towards year after year after year, which is the congratulations on your normal service retirement. Turn your shit in. We wish you the best. And then if you're lucky enough to have anybody within your agency when you do retire that is still there and may remember who you were, when that third email comes out, basically outlining when your services are going to be because you have since passed on, the harsh reality is it doesn't really matter at the end of the day whether or not you reached out for help once in your career. That's the harsh truth. Nobody's going to remember that. What they will remember is your behavior. What they will remember is your uncanny ability to hide your emotions, your uncanny ability to hide behind the dark humor, your uncanny ability to suppress a lot of the emotions that you may be facing over the course of your career. That's what people remember. No one's going to remember that, oh, you seeked out some help to become a better version of yourself. And I think for those that do it, and they do it silently, and they do it on their own, you would never know it. You would never know it. Over a course of time, you'll see changes in their behavior for the better. They'll start doing things that they weren't doing before, which is really caring for themselves, putting themselves first, not jumping at the chance to stay at work or go out after work and really take heed to what's important in their life. So when we use the term fear of career damage, is it really a fear or is it just what they've heard around the water cooler? Is it just the rumor mill perpetuating that if you get help, your career's over? And I think that it's the latter. I think that we've created this rumor that just because somebody got help, that their career is over. And that's just not the case. In a lot of cases, that's not the case. Not saying that it doesn't happen, but usually that there is something, an incident, on a personal level, a crime, unfortunately, or multiple crimes being committed, and then finally getting some help. Is kind of they're kind of pushed into it, and not on a self level. Like they're not self referring themselves. They're letting the command dictate how they get help. And I think that is what this fear of career damage barrier that we place is probably the biggest. So we need to re-educate our folks. And I've talked about this before. We need to update some of our outdated policy when it comes to this topic. I know that the term that's out there now is the trauma informed leadership. We have to teach our leadership how to be more trauma informed. Well, yeah, sure. But most of those leaders are dealing with their own shit that they don't want to face. So I think at the end of the day, not only do they need to be informed, but they need to start taking care of themselves. So when it comes time to make decisions in a leadership capacity, they're doing it from a place of empathy and not just a place of discipline. We talked about gossip within peer teams. Does it happen? Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, it does happen, and we need to do a better job as peer coordinators or wellness coordinators to really tighten in the reins. If you break confidentiality, then you have to go. You're sending a message to your agency that behavior that they're hearing about through the rumor mill is that somebody is running their mouth within the peer teams. And if we continue to let that behavior go on, we'll never see the trust and legitimacy of peer teams reach a level to where we normalize every conversation that we have around mental health and wellness. We'll continue to tiptoe around these conversations because of a lack of trust within an organization. I hit on clinicians a bit. There are tons of clinicians out here that are culturally aware. I don't like using the term culturally competent. I think that's a term that's overused. But culturally aware, but we also have a lot that claim to be culturally aware. And they lack the awareness of the lifestyle, which then, you hear the unfortunate stories of going to seek out help with a clinician and, the clinician ends up more traumatized than the officer or the firefighter or the dispatcher that goes in there that's seeking help. We also see those that speak up and say that they need help, unfortunately, fall victim to discipline because of a policy violation. And I spoke about that a couple minutes ago. Like, we need to do a better job of updating these policies that have been outdated for so long. We need to work with the human resources side of the house and really take a hard look of our current policies and how we can shape them for the culture. And I know the unfortunate thing is we have a tendency of having these policies in place and having HR kind of dictate how an employee assistance program is going to work. And unfortunately, it is purchased by the city to cover all city workers, with no input from public safety at times. No input from folks that are seeing their folks truly struggle with a lot of the cumulative trauma that they've witnessed over a career. And the EAPs that are in place are laughable. They're there so they don't get used. That is the harsh reality. Like, EAPs are in place so nobody uses them because they know they're not going to get the level of care that they need. So why are they going to bother using something that isn't going to work? And then lastly, our first responders don't know what's safe and what's not. See, we've got this culture issue of we trust one another and we trust we hang on to every word from our peers, our brothers, our sisters, and in hanging on to those words, we're left with their thoughts on public safety, wellness, not our own thoughts. And that has a huge impact on the quote unquote stigma. Is if our peers don't know who to trust, then we're just going to follow suit. We're going to continue down this road of, well, I heard this had happened to so and so. Well, I heard so and so got some help, and when they got back, they were punished. And if we don't rally around folks or reintegrate folks, and that's another word for another time, but reintegrate our folks that went and sought help, and actually kind of celebrate them, have them come back and tell their story, have them come back and normalize some of the things that they were facing and what they did to get help. We don't do enough of that. We like to slowly integrate them back into the fold as long as they can fill a patrol car or a truck or a bus or a seat. That's the bottom line. You know, how fast can we get them their fit for duty done so we can fill that chair or fill that car or fill that truck? That's the harsh reality. And we need to do a better job of reintegrating our folks back into the fold, celebrating the fact that they got help, and really embracing the fact that it is okay to seek out help, because nobody should expect you to see, to hear, to witness the things that we experience over a course of career and not be touched by it, or expect not to be touched by it, by existing policies and rumor mill. Because at the end of the day, that's what the stigma is. It is this rumor mill, this outdated policies, all the things that I listed, the lack of confidential support, all these barriers. But we don't want to talk about those things because they're difficult to talk about. But what's more difficult to talk about is the fact that when we lose somebody, instead of naming the true barriers, we'll name the stigma. When we lose somebody to suicide or we lose somebody to substance use disorder, we'll say that the stigma prevented them from getting help. We won't talk about these barriers. And that's something that we have to do a better job of. You see, most people stay silent, not from a it's a stigma type thing, but to protect themselves. It becomes a survivability issue, not only for their personal lives, but their professional lives. So how do we reduce it? How do we reduce it in this quote unquote industry of stigma? You know, I talked about it a little bit in the opening. You know, we're selling the End the Stigma slogan. We've got posters, we've got hashtags, we've got trainers that build programs and courses surrounding stigma. We've got, like I said, posters being put up in the break room saying "Stop the stigma." We've got clinicians that will continue just to use the word over and over and over again. So they can fix the trust issues amongst first responders and clinicians. T-shirts, campaigns, slogans, like I said, everything except the actual fucking work. We will do this whole stigma reduction play. Everybody will wear the T-shirt, but at the end of the day, you can't reduce the stigma by putting it on a fucking banner. You can't reduce the stigma by ending your post in a hashtag to do so. You reduce it by showing up a little bit fucking different. And we'll talk about that. What's that look like? What's showing up different look like? I talk a lot about legitimacy, and I talk a lot about trust. In order to build those, you have to build a connection. And in building connection, at times you've got to be a little bit vulnerable. And we've talked about this in the past couple of podcasts. I'm not looking for you to preach your story or preach the fact that you got help one time. All I'm asking you to do is keep that time in mind and be the person that you needed. Be the person that you needed when you were at your worst. And I promise you, you start showing up like that, those barriers start to get torn down. The barriers that I just listed slowly start to erode because you start building the trust. You start building those connections. And now you've legitimized a place to where someone can reach out without fear of retribution, without fear of, oh, my job's in jeopardy, without fear of somebody else is going to find out. We've got to do a better job. We've stopped dialing it in and actually focus on making those connections. And I promise you, these barriers will slowly start breaking down if you can build trust and legitimacy within your agency. Never mind your peer support program, within your agency, because the agency is going to unfortunately set the tone. Yes, we can bottom up it and kind of force the issue on our executives or our leadership, and they can quote unquote buy into it, but they will hide behind this. They will hide behind stigma every time something bad happens. Every time somebody doesn't reach out, they'll use this term over and over again. So like I said, we've got to stop blaming everything on stigma. Because at the end of the day, real problems aren't going to go away unless we face them. Whether that be leadership, because I don't know that this isn't a big secret, but leadership has a tendency of avoiding accountability. They dodge it very well. They're very nimble on their feet when it comes to accountability. I think peer teams are becoming superficial. I think folks are getting trained because it's the thing to do, without really understanding the impact that they can have on somebody. I think clinicians avoid self-reflection. Like I would love to have the conversation with some as to their why. Why are you in this space? What drove you to want to get into the public safety clinical space? Because it's not a fucking fun place to be in. Ask any culturally aware, established clinician in this space, and they will tell you that not only are they up against all these barriers, but once they get somebody that is willing to drop their guard a little bit, there's still internal and personal barriers that they have to tear down. So my clinicians, take a step back and ask yourself, why? Why are you in the space, and what drives you to want to change the culture in public safety? The big one is families are ignored too. I think that we missed a huge opportunity in educating our families as to what this job can do to you or do to their loved one. For so long, we've put up this barrier that we can't bring work home with us, so we push it all down. We hit the quote unquote on off switch. We do everything we can to protect the family from hearing about some of the things that we face on a daily basis. And I think that hurts us. I think that continues to perpetuate the stigma, so to say. So we need to do a better job of training our family members to kind of see the signs and symptoms, because they're our first line. They're the ones that see the behavior change first. So if we have folks in place to train our families, why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we doing this? We talk about shifting the culture. And I'll say that slower for everybody to hear. We talk about changing the culture. See, in order to change the culture, we need to change the culture. We can't just continue to talk about it. We have to actually be purposeful and intentional with what that looks like. I named off just a few different options, whether it be policy changing, whether it be executives dealing with their own stuff and being open about it, having a more empathetic reaction to some folks that have been hurting and continue to hurt. We can't keep talking about changing the culture. We have to actually change the culture. At the end of the day, stigma becomes a silencer of its own. You know, we hear, if you don't speak up, it's your fault because of the stigma. It's not ours because of how we treat you. And it's the complete opposite. It's how we're treated that perpetuates the stigma. It isn't the stigma. And we as a culture, we as leaders, we as even informal leaders need to be a little bit more forceful with our messaging. We need to be a little bit more on the side of we need to get out in front of this instead of waiting for the bad thing to happen. You see, it's easy for leadership to say, well, they didn't come see us because the stigma. No, they didn't come see you because they don't fucking trust you. They don't trust anything that you tell them because your actions have shown them differently. You can tell them that they're going to be fine. You can tell them that they'll have their job when they get back. You can tell them all the things that they need to hear in the moment. But your actions speak a little bit differently. And I'll use the term that's so often used here lately is it's the fucking gaslighting that is disguised as wellness. You know, well, we'll gaslight the shit out of somebody and disguise it as wellness. And we just have to do better. Like at the end of the day, it really doesn't cost us much to really do better. It's an individual choice at the end of the day. And I think as individuals, if we can just continue to make ourselves better, that is going to continue everybody else wanting to be better. If we model the behavior that we want to see, then that is going to perpetuate a culture of normalizing overall wellness, whether it be your physical, your mental, your spiritual, your financial. These are the things that don't get talked about and don't get enough time in the academy setting or in a in-service setting, because nobody really wants to have this talk. Nobody wants to talk about these barriers. Nobody wants to actually pull out the pocket mirror and go, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe the way I'm treating people is the problem. Maybe the way that I initially react to somebody struggling is the problem. So we need to do a better job. So what's the reset? What's the reset? It's simple. Stop saying the word stigma and start saying what's real. It's not rocket science. Start calling it for what it is. Instead of saying it's the stigma, say we don't have confidential options. Instead of saying it's stigma, say leadership has never modeled this before. Instead of saying stigma, People don't feel safe here. Instead of saying stigma, we haven't earned trust. Instead of saying it's stigma, our peer team hasn't been consistent. Instead of saying it's stigma, we've punished vulnerability before. These are all sad, sad truths as to the culture. Responders aren't avoiding help because they're ashamed. They're avoiding help because the culture has consequences. This is how you reset. Start telling the fucking truth. As hard as it is sometimes, you gotta start telling the truth. You gotta build safety. You gotta build trust. You gotta start using families and bringing them into the conversation. You gotta start using the lived experience that's in the space. You gotta start using the lived experience that's in the space. We've got to create confidential pathways. And we got to stop fucking hiding behind a buzzword that fixes nothing. You see, you don't break the stigma. There's no breaking the stigma. You replace it with being honest. So, I'm going to close this episode up. We talked about the term, but we have to realize that stigma is not the real enemy. It's a distraction. And as long as the culture leans on that stigma crutch, nothing will change. You see, first responders don't need another campaign. We don't need another slogan. We don't need another awareness month. We just need systems that we can trust. We need leaders that go first. We need peers that show up, and we need clinicians who understand the job. Not what they think the job is, but actually understand and have a sense of awareness of the job. We need to be bringing those families into this circle, or what I like to call the triangle, because without them, without having that foundation in place at the family level, the rest is hope and a prayer that we are able to catch something early before a major incident occurs. And we need people to stop hiding behind the word that lost its weight years ago. The term stigma has completely lost all its weight, in my opinion. For years, it's been used. We continue to use it, but I think at the end of the day, it's time to retire it. It's time to name the truth, and it's time to reset the excuses, because stigma never saved a responder. Honesty has. And that's going to be the end of the episode. I look forward to talking to you guys again. We're going to talk about gatekeeping on the next episode and how much of an impact gatekeeping has within the public safety wellness community. For those that want more information, please reach out at responderreset.com. You can also find me at lighthousehealthandwellness.com. If you're looking for some feedback, I'm looking for some feedback. Please hit up the email that I'll drop in the episode. So take a look at that. We're going to be gearing up into the new year, finishing out this 7-part series, and I look forward to hearing some feedback as to what you guys want to hear next. I'm wide open. There's not a topic that I won't talk about. So please take this opportunity as we gear up into 2026. Start throwing some ideas at me, and I'll be more than happy to bring some of the hard truth to you guys as an audience. Until next time, reset. The Responder Reset podcast is built by Lighthouse Health and Wellness for and by the people doing the work. If this hit home, pass it on. If you're carrying the weight, don't do it by yourself. Until next time, shift the mindset, change the outcome.